Start spreading the news.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
New York, I love you. I love New York.
Rose trying to get open, fires away. Bang! It's over! The Bulls win at the buzzer! Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James! LeBron James with a rejection. Puts up the three. Won't go. Rebound Bosh. Back out to Allen. His three-pointer. Bang!
What's going on, people? Welcome to another episode of the Off the Ball podcast with me, your host, Chris LeBron, and this show is brought to you by SeatGeek. SeatGeek, your number one place for all your ticket needs. Use promo code Off the Ball Network, all caps, to get $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek.com. Download the app. Do what you got to do. You know, I know maybe Wizard tickets, you might be able to bring the whole family, right, Matt? So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. I'm sorry.
It's true.
I'm sorry, Matt. I'm sorry. But as you see, I got a great guest with me, my guy, Matt Modderno. He is the host of Bleav Wizards with Johny White. Matt, what's going on, my brother?
I'm glad we're finally doing this, man. Been a fan from afar, so nice to catch up on a podcast platform like this, and I'm doing great, so thanks for having me.
Yes, and you are a Wizards fan. You do host a Wizards show. So before we get into, the toughness of this season the last few years, Matt, let's reel it back. Let's go back, to young Matt and all that. Were you born into being a Wizards fan, or did you choose, this path of Washington Wizards basketball?
I guess a little bit of both. We're from the general DC area, a little, like a suburb outside of the city, and we're kind of sandwiched right between Baltimore and Washington. So I gravitate toward the Baltimore teams. And when there isn't a Baltimore team, I end up with a Washington team. So that just sort of indoctrinated me into Wizards fandom from a young age. And it's been, I would say, a roller coaster. But what do you do when something is just down pretty much the entire time? So that's been kind of the Wizards experience for my last 35 years here.
So who were your guys growing up as being a Wizards fan? Who were your guys that you gravitated to?
It was funny, like my first real memory of like having a bullet at the time that I just like instantly gravitated toward was Rasheed Wallace. I don't know what it was about our 1 year of Rasheed Wallace, but that taught me like a very early lesson about what I was signing up for, because I was just like all in on this guy as like a 10-year-old, I want to say. And like, man, this is going to be so great. We got so many years for him. He's so good as a rookie. I can't imagine what, 6-year NBA veteran Rasheed Wallace is going to be like for the Bullets. And then, fast forward a couple years, and actually I was probably younger than 10 at that point. The years kind of blur together, but not only did we only keep him for the 1 year, we traded tall and young for old and short. And I obviously, I like the haul they got back because he was fun to watch in Rod Strickland, but it just, didn't quite work out the same way in the long term there, I would say. Yeah,
it's like for me, like first 10 years of my life, the whole 90s made the playoffs.
Yep.
So it's like, this is
sweet.
Yeah, I picked the right team. Yeah, because
this is easy.
I did have a moment where I was like, all right, maybe Orlando, because I love Penny Hardaway growing. That was the first two jerseys I ever got was a Penny Hardaway jersey and a Grant Hill jersey.
Okay.
So I was like, okay, maybe these are my teams because I like these guys so much and all that. And then just being in New York, you kind of just forced. And obviously at the time we were the only team. So it's like, all right, you know what? And all my family were like, yeah, no, you're a Knicks fan. That's it. All right. Pick the Knicks. And it's like, okay, they're good. We're not winning the championships, but we're in the playoffs every year, Eastern Conference Finals and the finals. I was like, all right, I made a great choice.
Yeah,
this is going to be great.
Break through here at some point. We're obviously going to win a ring. Yeah.
Everybody wants to come and play in New York, right? Yep. Okay. And see, I'm a Yankees fan too. So I was spoiled a little bit.
Winning is just so easy. It should just happen every season.
That is so easy. I'm like, we've done it for a decade. Only team in the East, I think, that made the playoffs every single year in the 90s. I'm like, Matt, we're good. Little did I know that there was the two that turned of the century. And
yeah, it didn't work out quite as well. But at least you got a little fun at a young age there.
I got two playoff series wins in 23 years since 2000.
Oof,
so
oof.
You
we're
know,
not much better off, unfortunately.
so it hasn't been easy, but
Let me ask
but
you one question real quick.
yeah.
Did you have to hate the Nets growing up? Like, was that just like a New Jersey, New York rivalry thing, or did people just say like we don't really care about the Nets?
I didn't really care. I don't think
Okay.
really it wasn't because they were in Jersey.
Yeah.
And there's kind of like a little rivalry with New York and Jersey because like
Mhm.
people kind
That's what
of
I was wondering. And like, if it's like F those guys, like
yeah,
that's our new team we hate.
yeah, but remember like in the early 2000s they had us.
Yeah.
they were even in the playoffs. I think we made the playoffs at like 38 and like 43 and they swept us, like dominated us. I think the back-to-back year
Mhm.
on the back end of the back end when they went to the finals. I think they destroy and they had our number for a little bit. Obviously, they had Jason Kidd, Jefferson, Vince Carter, and all that, Kenyon Martin. So they were way better than us. But it wasn't until they got Brooklyn where it got nasty.
Yeah.
Jersey was a little bit, but
Sure.
then when we got to Brooklyn and it's like, oh, you're marking on our territory, getting our territory,
Mhm.
and like try to buy your way to the fan
Yep.
base. It never, it didn't. We didn't like that. We didn't like that.
Taking KD away, like that kind of thing, like that would ratchet things up, I would think too.
That 2019. I don't know if a fan base has ever suffered more than the Knicks in 2019. I know
Yeah.
I know the Pistons fans are going through it. Your team's going through it. There's been plenty of fan bases that have gone through it. But 2019, Matt,
It was rough.
that might have been the lowest of the low for any fan base. That was like we lose out on the number one pick. We tank, all right. So first we tank, lose out the number one pick. We get the third pick, not even two, get
Yeah,
three.
basically a 2-star draft to get the third
Yeah,
pick.
yeah, and then we don't even have that guy anymore on the team, and then we lose out on KD and Kyrie, which maybe it worked out, long term, but at that disgusting. That was rough.
Yeah,
that was tough and all that. So I know your pain as a fan and all that. How was the Gilbert Arenas years? We can go through that first. Gilbert years, because he had a few years where he was like he was that guy when you got him from the Warriors. So how was that? In that time, hibachi time.
It was must see TV, honestly, especially if you're in this area, and that was kind of weird because it was after the Jordan years where there were a lot of sellouts and stuff.
Oh, I got to talk to you about. All right, glad you brought that up because we got to talk about that for a little bit.
Do you want to start there? And
let's go there because obviously Jordan comes back and
Sure.
What was when you heard Michael Jordan is coming back and he's playing for your team? What was your initial reaction as a youngin?
I was hyped just to have him associated with the organization because I was still a little too young to realize that not all great players are great front office people. So I'm like, bro, if Jordan can't sniff out who the top talent is, so be it. And then I was like, oh, if he loves this Kwame Brown guy, this has got to be a steal. Jordan wouldn't do us wrong. Obviously, he's probably working this guy out in the gym already. It's he did his workout with him pre-draft. But that obviously didn't work out super well. And then stuff leaks out over time. Jordan wanted to trade for Elton Brand instead and things like that to win now when he was trying to come back. And it just never really seemed real to me personally. I don't know how everybody else felt, but it was one of those things where this isn't is it really Jordan? Obviously he was older, but it just never quite felt like this is a thing that actually happened to us. And it was just interesting. It didn't work out super well. There's a really good book called When Nothing Else Matters by Michael Leahy that used to work for the Washington Post about Jordan destroying his knees, trying to rush to come back kind of haphazardly on short notice. And he struggled with that the whole time he was here, never really got healthy. But anytime a 40-year-old man can mostly lead to a team to the playoffs, and they sort of mortgaged the future, trading out Rip Hamilton for Jerry Stackhouse and just a bunch of stupid stuff that never really worked out. And it belied sort of the terrible organizational culture here. There's a story I relate to all the time and talk about on our pod, but Richard Hamilton told a story about when he got to Detroit, and they're like, look, you were a terrible defender in Washington. You became serviceable in Detroit. What changed? He goes, well, no one in Washington ever asked me to play defense. And when I got to Detroit, Ben Wallace pushed me up against a locker, and he and Tayshaun were like, you'll guard or you'll leave. It just, that speaks to the difference between how things worked in DC versus a team that actually, won things and made deep playoff runs. So Jordan years were fun and it was cool. You know, I remember my dad like throwing down for really nice tickets one time so we could see him and Vince Carter, my favorite player at the time, go head to head. And Jordan rolled his ankle in like the 5th minute of the game or something crazy like that. So just like, you know, just this is kind of how it felt, kind of snake bitten the whole time. But you know, it was still cool.
Yeah, I could imagine. I mean, didn't go the way you, of course, you wanted to. I'm sure you would have made make the playoffs and all that, but it's still Michael Jordan. Like,
Yeah, it was
and
still
like, yeah, even though it was 40-year-old version, it was still, and he had moments where he looked like he was, you know, Chicago Bulls Michael Jordan. So I'm sure just the atmosphere must have been great, you know, being there and all that. But we go from the Jordan era, now we go to Hibachi era. So let's talk about Hibachi and all that. And it was short-lived and all that. And it's unfortunate. He's going to be one of those players that you're always going to be like, man, what if he was healthy? Like he's definitely one of those what if players because he was on, you know, three-time All-Star, 3-time All-NBA, average 29. He'll always mention he dropped 60 on Kobe and all that. He'll always say it on his show and all that. So how was that era of that team? Because that was Antoine Jameson. You had guys, Brendan Haywood. You know, you had some guys there.
It was
Ron Butler too.
Yeah, it was the most fun I've had being a Wizards fan. It's like genuinely been downhill since then. Like you could argue that the John Wall teams later were better. I felt like that like healthy version of the Arenas, Butler, Jameson trio was the most actually capable of making a deep playoff run because you just kind of needed that guy that could go off and like carry you over the top and dueling against a young LeBron James. Like it was just the most exciting for me. I was also in college at the time. So, you know, I got to go to a lot of games. You could just metro in easily from University of Maryland. So that was super cool. Being there, you know, on opening nights while people still gave a shit about the team early in the season. And it was sweet. Like Larry Hughes is probably still my all-time favorite Wizard, which he kind of straddled the Jordan into Gilbert years. So that first year actually where they weren't really that good yet, but there was like hope for the future is maybe the most optimistic I've been as a Wizards fan. And it was like, okay, like they made some noise. They got to the second round of the playoffs. Like, yeah, the Heat wiped the floor with them, but okay, like we're building something. And ultimately Larry left for Cleveland and you know, they brought
Karan
in.
He got a nice contract. Got a nice contract with Cleveland.
He did, and the Wizards did him kind of dirty, but it never fully materialized. They were always kind of like one guy away from being like a real threat, it seemed like. But it's still fun. Like, I mean, Gilbert was obviously must-see TV, and I think he's the most captivating, like, DC area player I remember. I'm not a big hockey fan, but it felt like Ovechkin hype for about 3 years, and the knee stuff didn't work out. They threw the bag at him again after they knew his knees were cooked. So it just led to other bad stuff, the gun situation. So it was just this. That was the real roller coaster. It was so hyped, and just it had to come like crashing back down. So there you go.
Yeah. So you go into that, and now we go into the John Wall era, and then Bradley Beal and all that, and then you had some good memories and all, but it always, like I mentioned with Gilbert, and now we talk Brad and Wall. It's always like, what if? Like, yeah. I'm sure you feel like, man, like we had some real pieces to do some stuff, and it's just like, injuries. John Wall back-to-back injuries, and then it's just Beal, and it's Beal by himself, and it's just like, man, like why we constantly snake bitten, like you had Chris Webber, like Juwan Howard, Chris Webber before, Rasheed Wallace, Rod Strickland, you had all these guys, and you go to the Jordan, you get Michael Jordan, you have Michael Jordan on your team, and you go to the Gilbert Jameson, and then you go to John Wall, and you're like, oh, maybe this is it. Maybe we got our core. So like, how did this, version of the Wizards, how was that for you growing? And then, the end of that, how did that feel, with this era now?
If we go too far down memory lane, I'm going to go plug in a toaster and dive into a full bathtub after.
I'm sorry, Matt. I want to leave to some good stuff before we talk about the negativity that is your team now,
Yeah, you gotta hit rock bottom to appreciate the way up, is how I keep telling. Like when we actually win something, if it happens in my lifetime, it'll be pretty
I'm crying. Sweet. I know you're going to cry if your Wizards ever do, but if the Knicks win, I'm going to ball out. Like when they made fun of the Lions fan that was crying in the stands. I'm like, oh no, no, you don't make
The most
fun of him.
relatable thing ever.
I'm like, that's
some
going to
of
be
us.
me and a
Oh, yeah.
million other New Yorkers if the Knicks ever, or if you're a Jet, I'm not a Jets fan, I'm a Giants fan, so I've had 2 Super Bowls, so I've lived that. But if you're a Jets fan, you're balling. So I'm like, don't make fun of him because you don't get it. If you're a fan, when your team you suffered 0-16, no, don't make fun of that man. That man should be praised. Get him tickets now.
Yeah, the team owes him. Like that.
Team
That's the guy
it.
you want to keep
Yeah,
around. I think the fact that like those wall teams, they teased you a little bit of like, okay, if they got one more guy or they use the bench a little bit more or everyone stays healthy, it was just enough to like make you think like, okay, maybe there's something here. And that's really honestly been kind of worse if they were just consistently always bad. But there would be these like little ramp up periods of like, okay, maybe we're doing something here, only for them to kind of bottom back out. And just when you have a GM that's sort of the common denominator of like 20 years, or his years officially as the GM for 16, and they were bad for 12 of them. Like it's just that kind of stuff as a fan is just like a continual gut punch. Like, what if someone he built that team, but what if someone just better at their job came in at some point and got them over the top? Like plenty of well-run organizations say like, all right, this guy got us here. We need a different guy to like take that next step. This guy can only get you so far. We just have never done that. And then you hire basically his number 2 as his replacement for another couple bad years. So it's just, I don't know, the like really good front office structure and organization. And you hear all these things that the Wizards are behind the times in scouting department and analytics department and training staff and practice facilities. And I don't know, we just feel like a budget organization. So when you've had these little pockets of like flickers of success, it almost feels like more of a fluke than anything. Yeah.
And what do you think is the reason? Because like I said, I've gone through the same things with my team, and it's just like and I know a lot of people don't like James Dolan and all that, but I've always felt like he wants to win. Mm-hmm. I've always gotten that feeling, but I just feel like he just always figures it out to mess up. He just always hires the wrong people.
Yep.
And I feel like he's finally got it right. I feel like he's definitely gotten it right because we are a competent team now. So like he's done something right. But why is it like teams like the Knicks, before now, the Wizards, the Kings for so many years, Detroit? Why do you feel like we constantly always mess it up? Like it feels like you can't mess it up for 20 straight years. It just constant mess ups with coaching, drafting, or scouting, all these things that you're like, how do you keep getting in the way of yourself? Then you see these top life organizations like San Antonio, Golden State. They always get it right. And it's like, well, we're high, we think we're hiring the right people, we're not. But why do you think this is a constant, in DC especially?
I was gonna say maybe it's like karma for being asshole East Coasters, but New England win shit. So I know,
right? Both Celtics win, and they're just as bad as New Yorkers,
Right? Yeah, it's just it's hard to really pin down. I think that's probably the common denominator, though, is just mismanagement. Like
it's horrible mismanagement. Yeah.
It's a little different for the Knicks than the Wizards, I think, where for a long time before social media and widespread TV coverage and the internet and things like that, like being a major market made a big difference. So Madison Square Garden's a draw. Mm-hmm. I've asked multiple players that have played for the Wizards or played for other teams, just like, why is Washington not more of a free agent destination? And I think the answer is just like, they've been incompetently managed. So nobody had faith that if they came here, they would win, and becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like if you don't think they're going to do anything big or do it right, you don't go there. And if you don't go there, they're not going to do it right. And it just sort of snowballs for a while. And when you invest in the same kind of 2 people for so long, you had Ernie Grunfeld for 16 years. You had Tommy Shepard was here for 20 years. So you fire a guy for not doing his job well enough, and then the guy who was his right-hand man is the guy you shift up. It's just, maybe those were the wrong guys to invest in. Like that's 20 years of just wasted what ifs. Like if we had done this a little bit better, could we have made a run? Could we have gotten lucky enough? Just maybe the players you look at too. Like Gilbert was fun to watch. He was clearly a goofball. Wall breaks his hand. That's just unlucky. So you need a little bit of luck, I think, with some of these things, and we haven't really had it. Also, just not committing to being bad enough. If you're not going to get free agents, you've got to kick ass in the draft. And the Wizards are very happy to like beat their chest when they have like these like 9-1 or 9 of 10 streaks to close out a season. And that's the difference from like drafting Shaden Sharp 5th overall to drafting Johny Davis 10th. And you just see how things like that work out.
I
Like,
love Johnny coming out too, man.
I think all the Knicks fans did. I mean, like, not all, but
I told Knicks fans, this is our guy. This is our guy, and it just hasn't worked.
You can have him back if you want to make us an offer. Unfortunately,
we're good. I think we're good. I think I sold the stock. I officially no. My Marvin Bagley stock I officially gave up a few weeks back. And then he starts the ball. He goes to you guys 24. I'm like, oh wait. Did I sell? Did I sell too low? You're like, oh, he's balling out right now. But Johny Davis stock, I don't want to give it up yet. But
this is how sick it is being a fan of this team. Like I'm so used to us trading guys away and then them doing what Bagley is doing that I almost can't believe that he's come here and played better than he had at previous stops. And I just the whole time I'm like, okay, well, when the bottom drops out and he goes back to form. I just can't even enjoy the ride of just like 4 good games from a guy.
You got to put it in the rafters. Marvin Bagley 4-game stretch.
Hang the banner right now. Yeah.
Hang the banner for Marvin Bagley's 4-game stretch and all that. All right, Matt, let's get into it. Your Washington Wizards 7-35, 4 straight losses in a row. It's been a tough few years, but this year especially, it's definitely been rough and all that. So. Well, for you, you guys re-signed Kuzma and all that, and he had a great season last year and still putting up good numbers. You pick up Jordan Poole, and you guys have experienced the Jordan Poole experience, which has definitely been interesting.
Yeah,
it's been interesting and all that. So just talk to me about, let's start with Jordan Poole, acquiring him and all that. You add him to Kuzma. What was your initial thoughts when you found out that he was going to be a Wizard?
Anyone listening to this for the last 20 minutes can tell I'm a pretty jaded, bitter sports fan at this point. But going into this year, I actually thought like, hey, we're going to surprise some people. Like the Wizards are going to punch above their weight class. They're going to be young. They're going to be hungry. And at least in the second half of the season, maybe they'll surprise some people. They'll have young, fresh legs. Maybe they can make, that late season dent. And the over-under was 24.5. I kept saying hammer the over. I really thought that this was like a 28-win team. And not that that's anything great, but if you're a bad rebuilding team, but you're young and plucky, that's an exciting thing to watch. And this year's just been tough because, for the most part, these younger guys, like I would lump Poole in with the younger guys of people you thought could come here and maybe rehab their stock a little bit. It hasn't worked out particularly well, especially with him. I don't think anyone saw a world coming where he'd be this bad. I mean, I think that's kind of the only way to put it. He's mostly trended up the last couple weeks and maybe finding some footing and settling in a little bit. But, there were a lot of people like, oh, the Wizards are going to win 5 games, but Jordan Poole's going to average 30 a game. Well, I would have taken that.
I saw people putting bets on him to lead the league in scoring.
Yeah,
I saw people do that. I was like, that's a little rich, but I could see maybe him finishing, 24 a game, 25 a game, maybe definitely on low value, on low percentages. But definitely because he's going to have the opportunity, he likes to shoot.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it would be a little more efficient. I thought he had more playmaking there than we'd shown. Like his per 36 assist numbers compared to Steph Curry, like weren't even that different. I'm not saying he is Steph Curry, but like, I thought if he got out of a place where other people were doing a little more creation for others, that he could be a guy to come in and ramp those kinds of things up. And there's not a whole lot of making other people better. There's almost no defense. There's not a lot of anything else other than just heaving from 30 feet or like behind the back dribble combos that never actually seem to get him anywhere. So I think that'll change.
Sorry, Matt. I'm so sorry you have to deal with this.
It's just been more Shaq than a fool than like, yes, this is great moments. And that's tough. I do think he'll figure it out. Like I can't see, he obviously has some talent. He couldn't have done some of the things he did previously without it. It's just adapting to being at the top of scouting reports and things like that and settling into what's a good shot and maybe readjusting kind of what expectations are for him. Okay, maybe this is not a number 1 scoring option. Maybe this is a guy that's eventually best as like a bench scorer or a microwave scorer off the bench kind of thing. And, is he going to be okay with those things? So I think the biggest thing for Wizards fans, myself included this year, has just been how they use Bilal Coulibaly, our rookie. Like that's the guy. That's the one untradeable piece on this team, and we've all been saying that from day one. And now national media is acting like they came up with this amazing thing of just like, he should be the only untradeable guy. This is this great thought we've just had, but he's kind of just the usage just fluctuated. He sits in the corner a lot. They don't really involve him. The coach sort of brags about not running plays for him, so it's just kind of weird. And you've got basically a lame duck coach. Like I would be shocked if he's here next year.
Yeah,
And the team seems to treat him like that. So that it's tough.
Yeah, and yeah, it's definitely tough in the situation for Wes Unseld and all that. It definitely feels like, the writing's on the wall for him for sure and all that, and just figuring out this team and all that. But, with Jordan Poole, especially, I mean, he was playing on the Warriors, and he's playing with Steph Curry and Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, so he was going to get one-on-ones and that he was going to win. He was going to get the second, third best defender, and he's going to take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said, now you're going to Washington. Now you're 1-2, whether you flip-flop with you or Kuzma, sure. And now they're focusing on you, and he just doesn't. It feels like he doesn't take it serious. It's like, dude, like you have an opportunity for you to be your team essentially, and it's just the stuff you got away with the Warriors. You it's not working here. You guys are 7-35, dude. Like, what's going on?
Those word cloud things where you look up a word most commonly associated with people, and the biggest ones are the ones in the middle that are most used. Like the one that most comes up with Poole, I think, would be unserious. Like that's probably the thing I most see, describing him. And that's a tough pill to swallow. Like if he was just bad, but he was like playing hard as shit, I think people would kind of get behind that. And okay, he just doesn't have help and he's outgunned, but like, okay, when we have more pieces, there's something here. And it's just like, if he can't integrate into this team, like what's he going to do when there are other pieces? So that's just hard to picture what this looks like long-term and if he could actually fit into that at all.
But like some of the habits you have with the Warriors, because you're winning a championship, you can get away with there. But when you go to a different team and it's not the same, when it's not a winning culture and all that, you can't get away with doing the Steph Curry shit or these 3-pointers out of nowhere and not looking, like, yeah, that's cute when you're on the Warrior with Steph because Steph does it. But Steph's making them. You can't do it, and you're down 20, or you're on a 10-game loop. Like it's just not a good look and all, and just it just leads to obviously really bad basketball, and it just his and people, like I said, like we talked before, people thought he was going to have a solid season. Even if it wasn't efficient, it was going to be fun, and he's going to improve and all that. But like you said, he's gotten worse on defense. The playmaking is essentially non-existent, and it's just it's like the stuff you thought that was cool with the Warriors, like, oh, this is actually really bad. Ugh,
and maybe the toughest part about it is just like his I don't know, I'm sure you could relate to this too, as someone who like is so entrenched in rooting for a team. Being the stan of a player is just so foreign to me. Like the people that have followed Jordan Poole, now to DC, and like they'll have like a Shaq in the Fool of him like heaving up a 30-footer no look, with 27 seconds on the shot clock or something crazy that doesn't even actually, it can't even actually happen. But they'll be like, man, can't believe Kuzma did that shit to him. And you're like, how could that be anyone else's fault? Or that's Wes's system. It's so those kinds of things are especially infuriating because it almost feels like someone's trolling you the whole time. So he has to be bad. I have to watch him be bad. And I have to hear people say, well, it's our rookie Coulibaly's fault that Jordan Poole like did something stupid.
Then I mean, I've seen Wizards Twitter, and I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're in it more than I am, obviously, but I'm sure you're like, oh my God, but did you just say what? And I do, and listen, I'm on Nick's Twitter, and it's very bad. So sometimes I'm like, I can't believe I just did that. Why did I just open that up? Because it's just craziness. But I'm sure you get a lot of craziness on social media with the Wizards and all it takes. It's.
I love 95% of the people I interact with on there, like actually like feel some feeling of like love, camaraderie, brothership.
Yeah.
It's just that 5%, man. That is
It's
like,
allowed
what the
5% too, right? It's
Yeah, right.
allowed
The
5%.
loudest. You're an idiot. What do you mean? Like, yeah, that's tough.
Yeah. Somebody got on me for Johny Davis. Actually, I
Okay.
had said something about a prospect. Said, I like this guy a lot, and then got DM'd. He's like, "You're the same idiot that told me Johny Davis was going to be good on the Knicks show." I was like, bro, what about the other guy that told you going to be nice? He's like, but it's always that one.
Or the NBA team that took him 10th overall, and the other teams that would have also taken him in the lottery.
The next one, a lot of teams wanted him. It wasn't just like a lot of teams like Johny Davis and all that.
He was
so like
top 10 on the ESPN Best Available list, not by total accident. He was Big Ten Player of the Year, not by total accident. So revisionist history also just drives me fucking nuts. Like, anybody can pull up a receipt on anything, but I don't ever hear anyone slide into my DMs to be like, "Hey, bro, really loved that time that
really
you told
great
everybody." Yeah,
really
exactly.
great take.
Cool, man. Thanks so much.
I'll never get that. You'll never get that. But the one time you get them wrong on a prospect, they're like, "Oh man, I'll never listen to your stuff." What about? All right, I was right on a bunch of other guys.
Yeah. Remember that time I had Austin Reeves like top 20 on my board? No? Okay, cool. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. I told people about Kai Jones. I was like, don't take him next. I hope the Knicks don't. And we drafted him, but we traded him. I was like, no, don't take the value is not there. He's not. I don't think he's that good. I think he's just an athletic guy. And look, I was right. No, I don't get credit for that. I didn't get credit for that, but it happened. So let's talk about Johny Davis, since we talked about it. And I liked him coming out of college. You liked him coming out of college. A lot of people liked him. He made the jump from his freshman year to sophomore year, and I saw so much improvement and all of that. I thought it was going to continue to surge. Obviously, it hasn't worked out so far in the league and all that. So for you, what have you seen? What do you think has been his biggest difficulty so far in the NBA? And he's still young and all that, so I don't want to ride him off and all that, because there's maybe he just different scenery, and then he'll get an opportunity. But for you, what have you seen from Johny Davis that's that he's struggled so far in the league?
So it's funny you just ended that the way you did with not wanting to give up on him, because I actually didn't like the pick. I didn't want to take him where they took him. I had him like 19th on my own board. And even that, I just I can't justify putting him too much lower after what he did, in college, but I didn't want him. It didn't make sense here. Was sitting in, but it's now become the thing where I've become like the Johny Davis defender, because I just can't. You can't see a guy play 3 games and decide he's a bust. Like, that kind of shit drives me nuts too. How many times guys have taken 3-4 years to figure it out and turned into really productive players. And I didn't want the Wizards to give up that quickly, because I just assumed that the minute he ended up in like Minnesota, he'd be like the best defensive 2 guard in the league or something. But I think this is an organizational failure more than it's just an individual Johny Davis failure, because on draft night, you had Woj, who's pretty chummy with our former GM Tommy Shepard, tweet out, "The Wizards have drafted their point guard of the future." Okay, GM gets up on the stage, or not stage, up at the desk for media availability. It says in front of all of us, "Just drafted our point guard of the future," and everyone's kind of looking at each other around like, "Oh, okay, sure, he can dribble, kind of." Then the coach comes in and like, "Coach, Tommy just said, we drafted our point guard of the future. Are you going to play him at point guard?" He's like, "Oh, I don't know if he's ever played point guard before, so we'll just have to see, how it plays out." And then you talk to Johny Davis, and it's like, "Hey, are you a point guard?" Well, I've never really played that before, but I'm a ball player." So, like, it just seemed like they didn't know what they were drafting and didn't know what to do with him, and wanted to shoehorn him into a position that never really made sense. The one position you were locked at was shooting guard with Bradley Beal, so you draft a shooting guard in the top 10, and it just felt forced. And then you throw him out in summer league with guys that were never going to sniff an NBA roster in a million years, that would be struggling to be on G League rosters, and give him no help and throw him to the Wolves. And then when he looks like trash, he was also playing through an injury during that. So I think it just killed his confidence. The shot needed work. They've totally retooled it. You've probably seen this floating around the internet, but there's pictures of him like elbow out, hand in front of the ball, his knees touching in the middle, but with a wide base for his feet. It looks like the screwiest thing you've ever seen. And the worst part is, it'd be one thing if they just helped him reshape to bad form but every time you see it, the form is different. And you're just
Yeah, it's
never
not.
going to rep that out. Like there are guys that are bad shooters that, in their late 20s, they become knockdown guys, even with wonky forms, because they've adjusted to that line and they've made it work. And they've put the work in to do it. And with Davis, he's still always kind of banged up. It almost seems like it has to be a Markelle Fultz situation here too. Like, okay, there's been some elbow stuff. Like maybe these
Could
things
be.
are lingering. Like it just seems like a perfect storm of can't get healthy, ruined his confidence, and just it just seemed just doomed here at this point that this is not going to work out for both parties. And like you said, maybe the change of scenery is just kind of it's time for that. But the problem is the only way he moves is if he's like salary filler on some other deal, and some other team. Are they going to give him opportunities to let him kind of work through these things? Because they don't give a shit about him. He's not their draft pick.
He's not their guy. Yeah,
So,
exactly.
It's tough.
So he can. Sad part is he can just be one of those guys that he's always like the add-on on the trade and just keeps bouncing around, and it's hard to really establish yourself, especially when you struggled early in your career. Now you're gonna go to a different team that, like you said, they didn't draft you, they don't really care about you, or are you really gonna get an opportunity? So it feels like it's gonna be tough for him. But so I'm rooting for him because I did like him a lot coming out of the draft and all that. But it's definitely been tough so far in his career. But hopefully he can figure it out. And like I said, guys have had resurgences a few years after with tough struggles early in the career. So hopefully he's one of those guys that turns it around and
Shameless
figures it
plug,
out.
if you'll indulge me for 1 second here.
Oh.
Like probably one of the podcast episodes I think I'm most proud of that we did. I brought Sam Decker on, and another Wisconsin guy. He knows Johnny a little. Just wanted to talk through that, but Sam kind of went through something similar where this was a guy that was not quite a lottery pick. I think he went 15th, but same kind of cachet, like that kind of thing, college status, and
it's a national championship.
Yeah, exactly. And he got a little banged up, missed some time early on his career, got off to kind of a slow start, got things rolling, but then got thrown in as filler in a trade and ended up in a new place where they were kind of like, you're not really our guy. We don't really need you. Never really got comfortable, never got to kind of like grow into the player he could end up being. And then by the time you know it, you're on your third stop and people don't really give a shit about you. So you don't get a fair shake and you end up like killing it overseas, but it's still, this is a guy that's probably an NBA player. And it seems like that might be kind of the Johny Davis route, but it was just interesting hearing from Sam, like what teams did to him and trying to retweak his form and the things that he could do to try to rehab his confidence and value and things like that. So that was kind of cool to talk about the parallels with him and Davis. And I think everything he said there has kind of turned out to be true so far, unfortunately. But he also said, like, here are the things that they could do with Davis to help him bounce back. And none of those things have seemingly happened either.
Yeah. That's definitely, good to I definitely got to check that out and see, because, not everything is always peachy. Just because you're a top, 15, 20 pick doesn't mean everything's going to go the way you think it is. And it's learning from that. And, some guys get that opportunity, some don't, but Sam Decker definitely had a career where you thought he was going to have some, because in college, I thought Sam Decker was going to be definitely a solid pro and all that. What he did in that tournament, in 2015, leading to the national championship and the upset over Kentucky, you thought, man, this kid's pretty solid and all that. But, so where you go to is very important too.
Yeah.
And Johny Davis just may have went to the wrong team. And unfortunately, that can derail your career and all that. So hopefully for him, he'll figure it out, whether it's in Washington or somewhere else. But obviously there's a lot of lowlights this year for the Wizards and all that. But what are some of the positives that you can take out of a 7-35 season so far, Matt? If any.
Yeah, no, I think there are a couple. Like I know I've painted a pretty negative picture here, but there's like some things to look forward to. There's a little hope for the future. You got a front office dream team. Like all these guys have been competent, at a minimum, but successful at varying levels other places and helped find talent in unique places and rebuild teams quickly and, turn teams around. And I think that gives me some hope that they can rebuild, but also rebuild fairly quickly. I loved what they did on draft night with Koulibaly. It was the opposite of the kind of picks that we'd made the last, I don't know, realistically like 15 years. So They went for a high risk, kind of high reward guy in Koulibaly, and I think it's already paying off. They went for an athletic player, like that was when
Mhm.
Tommy Shepard got the job previously. The first thing he said was like, I'm going to draft like athletic wings who can shoot, and then proceeded to draft no athletic wings that could shoot. So you did that like basically day one. Not that Koulibaly came down as a knockdown shooter, but the form wasn't broken and things like that. And
Yeah.
the percentage isn't like as great as you'd want this year, but he looks competent and he's quickened his release already and he's made some strides. So I think this is a guy where like the ceiling is pretty legit. And, I'm not saying he'll ever be like prime T-Mac or something, but I think this is like a piece you can build around for the future. So that's awesome. Daniel Gafford's been better than expected for most of this
he's
year,
doing
in
really good.
my opinion. A lot of Wizards fans just hate him. Like, oh, he fell down. It's like, well, okay, cool, man. He's kind of a guy that probably should be like a really good backup center that you're asking to be the only center, not on Medicare on the entire roster. And it's a tough ask. So I think he's been better than expectations. Denny Avdia has been great for the most part this year. I still think the ceiling for him is probably like just a solid back end starter, good rotation player, but that's okay. You're paying him $11-12 million a year, and he's going to outperform that contract so far in year one. He's shown some strides and gives you hope that he can keep getting better. Tyus Jones been pretty good offensively. He's going to get
Mr.
traded,
Reliable.
but
Mr. Reliable.
yeah. So there's some pieces there. I think you've got Kuzma on a good contract, so that's a trade piece for the future, longer term. Kispert's probably a trade piece for the future, longer term, or he could be a guy that could fit into your next timeline too. So there's some things. It's not totally bleak, I don't think, but we own like every second round pick between now until the end of time, it seems like. So maybe you can cobble a few of those together into extra first round picks. You got some pick swaps coming from the Suns, and they look like they could fall apart at any day, just given the health of their big three. So, maybe we could be where you guys are in another 3 or 4 years, and I would honestly kill for that. So enjoy it, Knicks fans.
And that was going to be my next thing is like, how are you feeling about the future of this team? What's your prediction for the next couple of years? Do you feel like you can get to where you want to be, or you still feel like, okay, you're still not sure because of, you don't believe in the front office, something?
I'm all in on this front office, and I'll continue to be all in until they do a bunch of dumb shit that we've got to be immediately out on. I've got to give them at least a couple years, like moves like Bagley. If you can trade Muscala and Danilo Gallinari's corpses for a competent player with some value and some second round picks, even like that's a win to me. So I think if they can keep making those kind of moves and slowly moving in the right direction, that'll be great. So, they've given us just enough already to be like, okay, this is a good place to start. Can we keep doing it? The thing that's going to be interesting for Washington is just there's this, impending move to Virginia and to open a new big arena.
Totally forgot about that. Yeah.
So
how was that? How are you guys feeling about that? How's the area feeling about that? Because I have my cousin lives in the DC area, and he's always going to Wizards games, and I talked about him about that. And he's a Knicks fan though, but he always going to Wizards game and all. But he's just like, the kind of people kind of bummed out about this.
I think if you live in Virginia, it's great. If you live anywhere else, you're like, wow, this kind of blows. I've like softened on it a little bit. I hated it immediately. I don't live directly in DC. I'm in the burbs, but I want the city to do well, and it needs things like that. Honestly, I work a couple blocks from the arena, so if that thing moves out and they can't fill it with other stuff, I think that area is going to struggle. And it was kind of not the best, not unsafe or anything like that, in my opinion, but just some stores were closed and hadn't rebounded and things like that post-pandemic because you don't have people coming in the city as much every day. So they needed to figure some things out. Losing the team hurts. But you've got this big, shiny new arena coming in like 2028. They're not going to let this rebuild stretch that far. So you've now got a ticking clock on how quickly you have to build this team. And at some point, does that cause you to shortcut things or cut corners or throw dumb money at people that you probably shouldn't? And that is the kind of stuff I worry about. So to come 2026, when you have to start selling those luxury boxes, you probably need to show some signs of growth at least. I'm not saying you need to have a contender, but you can't still be 7-31 or whatever the F we are at this point. Like you've got to at least be like, okay, this is a fringe play-in team with a bunch of like exciting young guys to be able to market those seats. And we'll see if they can get there in basically 2 off seasons. And that's the piece that makes me a little kind of nervous, I'd say.
I think you just want hope, right?
Yeah, that's exactly.
I think feeling hopeless, is the worst thing. Like I said, I felt like that in 2019. I thought we've had some bad off seasons of Knicks, but that felt hopeless. I'm like, oh, I don't know if we're ever going to figure this out. And obviously, we somehow figured it out, and now we have a competent team, which is that's a good feeling. Obviously, I want more, but it's better than it was before. But I think for you just want this. You want to have hope. You're like, okay, hey, yeah, we're struggling, but at least all right. We can get a couple pieces here now. Maybe we can be a play-in team or be a top 6 seed. No, I think that's what you want, and I'm sure you're hoping going into potentially a new stadium and all that, and in the latter of the decade that you have that, and you're going in and you're feeling better about this team and all that. Because like I said, feeling hopeless, it's terrible. Like I feel bad for like I said, my team went through it. Pistons fans are kind of feeling that, right now and all. Like Spurs, it's feeling like the Spurs are really bad, but they're like, we have our superstar, so like, yeah, it sucks right now, but
also, we got 4 rings. I just never feel bad for you,
and that too. Like, I'm not really gonna feel too bad because you had that success. You got a little bit of downtime, and then of course they get the franchise, savior, But I hope everything goes well for the Wizards and all that because I got family out there and they're Wizards fans, and next time my cousin lives out there, and then they want everything good. But I want for you, man, because I want you to be happy.
Thanks, man.
I want you to be happy.
I just want to be where you are. Like at some point, I might just need to move to New York and pretend I've been there the whole time. Like
we'll take you on. We'll do the FU Trae Young chants together and all that. We'll go outside, go crazy because we win one game, a regular season game, and it looks like we just won the NBA Finals. Imagine if we ever do. I always say that. Imagine if we're in the city.
Funny, last year I went to a regular season Wizards at Lakers game. First day before I went to the Clippers game, and I was like, all right, this is kind of like a Wizards experience. Maybe this is regular season basketball at random arenas. And the next night, just being at a regular season Lakers game, it was like, holy shit, is this what like competent basketball fandom is like? And that's what a Wizards playoff game looked like. So it was just, I don't know. I've never been to MSG, so that's on my bucket list here.
If you ever come out here, let me know. We'll have a good. It's an experience because it's just. It is something, that's why visiting players love coming here.
Yeah. And
because it's just a different the atmosphere. You feel it once you enter, you feeling like, oh, okay, I get it. As a visiting, everyone that I've known that is as a visiting fan and they're coming from wherever, they're like, oh, and they go, they're like, oh, I get it. Like it's hard to explain, but like I get it. It's just a different aura about it. You feel it. It's just you see all the history, the banners, not our banners, but the other banners.
The banners, yeah.
Their banners there, they're a little old, a little reconditioning, but there's some banners there. But just like the history of everything, all the major events that's on there. So you ever get out there, you should definitely get out there. You'll feel it. It's just a different atmosphere on all that. But Matt, my man, I appreciate you, brother. This has been a lot of fun. Having you on, like I said, we went through some memories, some good memories, some bad memories, but hopefully it won't take too long to figure it out with the Wizards and all that. But before we sign off, man, tell the people where they can find you and all the great work you do.
Appreciate that. Yeah, thanks again for having me. It's Bleav in Wizards, BLEAV. We're on the Bleav Podcast Network. So it's me and former Wizard Johny White, and just if you're listening to this, you probably don't give a shit about the Wizards, but there's not a ton to talk about with them right now anyway. So we do a lot of just, hey, Johny, take this situation going on with the team and explain what it's like, from an NBA player perspective. What's that locker room, like right now? What's it like to be traded or be, on the trading block or hear your name in rumors or have to move midseason? So if you're just ever kind of curious from an NBA player perspective, what these different types of NBA themes and rumors and stuff like that mean for them. He does a really good job of giving, those kind of insights. So give us a check, give us a listen, that kind of thing. But yeah, that's just kind of the main thing, and just kind of hope for the best and have more things to talk about here in the future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, make sure to check out all the great things Matt's doing. He has a great show and all that. And definitely, where can they find you on Twitter or X, whatever it's called now?
Yeah, it's at Matt Modderno. Just the word modern with 2 D's and an O at the end. But we're also Bleav Wizards on Twitter and stuff too. So it'll have all the kind of content we put out too.
Awesome. And I'll make sure to put that all in the description, all the show links. So, like I said, once again, thanks, Matt, for coming on the show. You can follow me, Chris LeBron. Off the Ball Pod is where I'm at on X. You can follow the Off the Ball Network on YouTube. Make sure to give us a like and a sub. Make sure to follow the Get a Bucket podcast I do with my guy Kev. We talk all things college basketball, recruiting scenes, all that good stuff. So check that out. We had a few episodes we dropped talking Memphis Tigers basketball. They're on the up and up, so we make sure to check that last EP that we had. But make sure to follow on, subscribe on, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to your podcast. Make sure to check this out. But on that note, be well, be safe, take care. Peace out, guys.